from Illinois.
Mr. President, I want to take some time today to talk about my views on Afghanistan and why we should rethink aid to Pakistan. I just completed my third 2-week reserve assignment in Afghanistan, and while many members of Congress get a first-hand look at the situation when fact-finding missions, my time provided me a more in-depth view with a focus on the counter-narcotics objectives of NATO's ISAF mission. Now, first, the good news. The work of our soldiers, Marines, sailors, and airmen is nothing short of amazing. Serving in one of the poorest, roughest, and most remote parts of the globe, they have crushed al-Qaeda's training bases. They have driven the Taliban from government. They fostered a new elected government and welded 47 allies into a force for human rights and development and education, especially for girls. Now, 42% of Afghans live on just $1 a day. Only 1 in 4 can read. Malnutrition is a serious problem, and infant mortality is the third highest of any country. According to the United Nations, nearly 40% of Afghan children under 3 are moderately or severely underweight, and more than 50% of children under 3 experience stunted growth. Afghanistan has more than twice the population of Illinois, but its electricity generation for the entire year is less than 2% of the electricity generated in Illinois just for the month of May. The nearly 30 million people of Afghanistan are victimized by a number of terrorist groups beyond just the Taliban, like the HIG, the ETIM, and a new threat called the Haqqani Network that I will go in detail about. The Afghans are most victimized by their neighbors, the Pakistanis. Now, I served as a reservist in Afghanistan for the first time in 2008, and I believed then that Pakistan was complicated, that we have many issues there, and we should advance our own interests diplomatically. I no longer agree with that. Pakistan has now become the main threat to Afghanistan. Pakistan's intelligence service is the biggest danger to the Afghan government. Pakistan also poses a tremendous threat to the lives of American troops. And let me be clear, many Americans died in Afghanistan because of Pakistan's ISI. Sitting in our commander's briefs for 2 weeks and talking to our headquarters leaders and spending a few days in the field, it became clear to me that if we were working in Afghanistan alone, we had a much better chance to turn that country around more quickly, restoring it to its status as an agricultural economy with a loose government and a high degree of autonomy given to each tribe or region. But we are not alone. While our military reduced al-Qaeda in Afghanistan to a shadow of its former shadow, a new force is emerging. On the 10th anniversary of 9/11, al-Qaeda, I must report, is still armed and dangerous, but it is far less numerous or capable than it once was. But al-Qaeda is not the most potent force that is arrayed against us. The new face of terror is called the Haqqani Network. Built around its founder, Jalaluddin Haqqani, and his son, Shiraz, it has become the most dangerous, lethal, and cancerous force in Afghanistan. And one other thing. As much as Pakistani officials claim otherwise, the Haqqanis are backed and protected by Pakistan's own intelligence service. Statements by Pakistani government officials to the contrary are direct lies. The Haqqani Network kills Americans, it attacks the elected government of Afghanistan, and remains protected in its Pakistani headquarters of Miriam Shah. Without that Pakistani safe haven, the Haqqani Network would suffer the same fate as al-Qaeda. Afghan and U.S. Special Operations teams take out many Taliban and al-Qaeda commanders, and these operators operate each night also against numerous Haqqani leaders. But the Haqqanis are able to spend all day planning attacks on Afghans and Americans, and then sleeping soundly in their beds in Pakistan. In such an environment, with our deficits and debt, military aid to Pakistan seems naive at best and counterproductive at worst. I'm seriously thinking that we should reconsider assistance to the Pakistani military. Recently, our president chose to withdraw 33,000 American troops from the Afghan battle. General Petraeus and Admiral Mullen did not choose this option. Nevertheless, I think our new commander, General Allen, can withdraw the first 10,000 American troops by Christmas without suffering a military reversal in Afghanistan. Afghanistan's army and police are growing in size, now numbering over 300,000, and capability. And despite recent reports of desertions, Afghanistan's security forces will soon reach a level where some of our troops may safely leave the country. As we withdraw, we should consider enablements like a pay raise for Afghan troops to improve their retention and morale. Now, I spoke with General Allen about a commander's assessment that should be delivered at the end of the year. After withdrawing 10,000 troops, I hope that he will clearly define when the next 23,000 can come out. Now, in the United States, politically, there is little difference between withdrawing at the end of the year and withdrawing at the end of the fiscal year. But militarily, there is a world of difference. The fighting season in Afghanistan runs through October. If General Allen is ordered to withdraw his troops by September 30th, then many of his forces will disappear during the Taliban's key offensive months. But if the troops leave in November, December, we will guarantee another bad military year for the Taliban and the Haqqanis, and an even stronger Afghan army in the long term. I hope the president sets an end-of-year deadline rather than an end-of-fiscal-year deadline. It's the right thing to do militarily and politically. And if he does this, he reduces the chance of a radical Islamic extremist victory on the Afghan battlefield in 2012. While in Afghanistan, I worked to help update and rewrite ISAF's counter-narcotics plan. Afghanistan is the source of over 80% of the world's heroin and opium. The drug economy fuels the insurgency and corruption of the Afghan government itself. From 2001 to 2009, Secretary Rumsfeld and then Ambassador Holbrooke blocked ISAF from doing much about narcotics. This left a huge funding source for the insurgency untouched. ISAF was able to change direction slightly in 2009 and 2010 by supporting interdiction and eradication and alternative livelihoods for Afghan farmers. But while commendable, these programs didn't work, and the size of the Afghan poppy crop is likely to go up. The plan that I worked on advocates a shift in ISAF to apply its military strength of intelligence and helicopters and special operations to support Afghan decisions to arrest the top drug lords of Afghanistan, starting with the ones who heavily financially back the insurgency. We joined together in 2005 to arrest bin Laden's banker, Haji Bashir Noorzai, and we should do it again. I strongly backed the Afghan counter-narcotics ministry idea to announce a top 10 drug lord list to emulate the early success of J. Edgar Hoover when he established the reputation of the FBI. In our remaining 2 years in Afghanistan, we can do a lot to cripple the insurgency and help the 2014 elections by removing a number of key bad actors from the battlefield. Now, what about the future? The President says that our formal current mission will end in 2014. Much of his vision will be approved at the Chicago NATO summit in May of 2012. By 2014, I believe that Afghans will be able to do nearly all of the conventional fighting, with some U.S. Special Operations support remaining. But remember, while the Afghan army is likely to win, its budget for this year is $11 billion. The Afghan government collected only $1 billion in tax revenue in 2010. We will have to help, and without regular U.S. combat troops, we risk a Taliban-Haqqani-ISI alliance winning unless we do help that Afghan military. On the 10th anniversary of 9/11, we should all agree that Afghanistan should never become a major threat to American families again. Should Pakistan not change its ways, we can do one other thing: an American tilt towards India to encourage the world's largest democracy to bankroll an Afghan government that fights terror and the ISI. Given the outright lying and duplicity of Pakistan, it appears that a tilt towards India will allow us to reduce our forces in Afghanistan, knowing that India will help bankroll an Afghan government. This would allow us to reduce our troops while also reducing the possibility of Afghanistan once again becoming a terrorist safe haven. Pakistanis would object to this pro-Indian outcome, but they will only have their own ISI to blame. September 11 teaches us that neither the United States nor India can tolerate a new, formal Afghan terror state. It's too bad that Pakistan seems to have chosen to back the losing side, the terrorists, against the Afghan people and the two largest democracies on earth. And finally, a word about our troops. Each night, they combat the most dangerous narco-insurgents on earth, and many 19 and 20-year-old Americans volunteered to serve, over 7,000 miles from home. Their generation is named after September 11th, but these Americans in uniform not only carry their generation's label, they are personally employed in risking their lives to ensure that all Americans will never again witness another September 11th. They are America's best hope, and I hope to God that when I'm older, some of them run for president. From my own nursing home, I know that the country would be in good hands if one of these young Americans guides our nation's destiny. I'm lucky to know many of their names. Major Fred Tanner, U.S. Army, Lieutenant Colonel Doug McCobb, Air Force, Major General Mick Nicholson, Army, and our allies, Wing Commander Howard Marsh, Royal Air Force, General René Martin, French Army, Rear Admiral Tony Johnston-Brute, Royal Navy, and Colonel Robin Vickers, British Army. I honor them and their younger comrades, wishing all of the military personnel of ISAF's 47 nations a very good day as they wake up in Afghanistan tomorrow morning for another hard day's work on one of the most toughest battlefields in the world. Thank you, and with that, Mr. President, I yield back.